There we go. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Noah. I'm one of the educators with Shortcuts, and today we're going to be reviewing online booking. So, how do you configure it and how do you use it with the Shortcuts system? So, as with other presentations, let's go ahead and go through our slides. So, this presentation is going to be about 30 minutes. We are recording, so if you have to step out, that's fine. We will send you a copy of the recording a little later today. Now, last week's classroom session with regards to Shortcuts reports, we had an error uploading it last week, so we had to try it again. So I sent that email out this morning. So if anybody was waiting for last week's recording, you should have it in your inbox today. And hopefully there's no errors when we try to upload this file. So I should have a link for you later today for today's presentation. So again, if you have to leave, that's okay. We'll send you a copy. And if you have any questions after the fact, we'll also give you our contact email so you can ask us the questions if you're watching this later. So today, we're going to focus specifically on online booking. So what are the settings you should know about in the actual Shortcuts point of sale system? What are the configuration options that you have? And then we'll look at how do you make an appointment for yourself or for your family members in the actual online booking. So in your Shortcuts system, there's actually a few things you can configure ahead of time to make sure that you're ready to accept appointments. So a lot of the salons and spas and barbershops that we're working with, they've been closed for some time due to COVID restrictions. So now that a number of municipalities, states are starting to change their laws with regards to capacity, now you're able to start opening up your appointment books. So you want to make sure that the right services, the right employees are available for online booking. So in a moment, I'm going to show you where to configure those in Shortcuts. So it's not just enough that you have Shortcuts know which employees are available for an appointment, what services are available for online booking. Shortcuts helps you filter out certain employees if they should be the only ones available for a service. And that's actually called a capability. So you can tell Shortcuts, for example, if you have a nail technician that's on your team, who these people are, and then what services they're available for, so that if somebody goes online to book a manicure or a pedicure, they don't end up with the wrong employee. So that's how capabilities work. So let's actually look at some of the settings you want to configure ahead of time in Shortcuts. So I'm going to get out of the presentation for a moment. So in Shortcuts, now remember the version of Shortcuts I'm using for my classroom sessions is version 8.1. So your version might look a little bit different, but all of the steps with regards to configuration are actually the same between 8.0 and 8.1. So on the right side, I'm going to go to Setup, and the first thing I'm going to look at are my business details. So under Setup, I'm going to Configuration. And on the left side of the screen, I'm going to go to the General button, and under General, I'm going to Business. So this is my Shortcuts test salon. Now, whenever you're setting up online booking looks at three things. What are your business hours? What is your staff availability? And what services are bookable online? So the first thing you want to make sure is that your business hours are correct here. So if you're reopening or you're opening soon, double check your business hours to make sure that they're updated. That's the first place. The second place that you check after you do this is on the right side. You're going to go under Setup to Services. So you get to choose which services you're going to allow customers to book online. This is one of the questions that I often get when I'm training new customers in Shortcuts. I don't want to use online booking because I don't want customers to book everything I have. You actually pick and choose what you're going to allow customers to book. Now, the fastest way to set this up is to actually look in the middle column where you have an option that says Web. And under Web, you can actually check or uncheck the services that should be available online. This checkbox also appears if you go into the details for a service. On the bottom left corner, there's a corresponding checkbox under your options that says can be booked via web. So make sure that your business hours are up to date and that you've selected which services you're going to allow to be booked online. Now, if you have a salon, and of course, anybody that has done hair before can tell you that whenever you have customers, no two heads of hair are the same. So when you're dealing with color, the length of the hair, the thickness of the hair, there's a number of things that determine how much product you're going to use and how much time they're going to spend in the chair. So offering a color service isn't necessarily something that a lot of salons do, unless they can guarantee that the customer is at least going to be in a ballpark that works for certain lengths of hair. So salons sometimes will offer something like color, like full head of highlights or half head of highlights, and they will actually specify if you have long hair and some places say it's, past the shoulders or up to a certain length, they'll actually have a certain time and a certain price, which at least gets them in the ballpark. Or if you have a service for customers with short hair, that's a different time, a different price. So that customers right away can see if I'm doing some color and I know I have short hair, that's the one I want. And if I know I have shoulder length hair or longer, then I want the other. So think about updating your service menu to reflect that if you're going to allow certain color or certain chemical services. So that's the second thing you do. Business hours, and then what services. The third thing you do is you go to your staff, your employees' options, and at the bottom of the screen, you set their schedules. You set when they are available to take appointments. So online booking does look at staff availability. So make sure you mark the days on, the days off as well. And if a staff member says, okay, I'd like to take a vacation in a couple of weeks, so go ahead and mark those off. And Andy, for example, if I go to his column, I can say, okay, first week of March, he's going to take a trip, so I'm going to mark off his vacation day, which happens Friday. He's normally off Saturday, and he's also going to take Sunday off. So 3 days off. So anybody that tries to book for next week, they'll know Andy is not available. So make sure your staff schedules are updated for those days. Now, if you're dealing with something like capacity, if you're dealing with something like, well, I normally get a lot of walk-in customers, but because of capacity issues, the state or the county is requiring me to have only appointments at this time, not really walk-ins. And then as restrictions begin to get lifted, I'm going to open more and more of my books up to allow walk-ins. So if you want to be very strict on what is available online or not, you can go under Setup Configuration, and on the left side of the screen, you can go to General and your Appointment Book Settings. Now, if you'll excuse me, somebody's trying to call. I'll have to decline this call. Okay. So under your Appointment Book Settings under General, at the top of the screen is Time Allocation. Now, depending on your business, you may decide half of my day is reserved for walk-ins. So you can set it to 50%. And Shortcuts will distribute that 50% across your staff for the entire day, the staff that is working. And then once you hit a limit, whether it's an appointment or a walk-in, then Shortcuts will warn you. For the next appointment, you're at capacity, you really shouldn't book anymore. Or vice versa. If you deal with a lot of walk-ins, Shortcuts will say, okay, you've hit about 50% of the day for walk-in customers, the rest should be left or reserved for appointments. But in this case, if my county is very strict about capacity and they only want to allow appointments, then I'm going to say 0% is reserved for walk-ins. So online booking knows all of the available times for my staff, should only be used for an appointment. So this does reflect online. The other thing that reflects online are your capabilities. So remember, capabilities is where we tell shortcuts which employees are allowed to perform certain services. If you've never set a capability up before, it's very easy. There are no capabilities by default in shortcuts. So if you go to this button and you don't see anything, that's by default. You have to tell shortcuts what services are you talking about and who's the employee that can do this. So let's say I have one employee on my staff that is a licensed barber and they're allowed to do straight razor services. So what I can do is I can press the new button and I will label it accordingly. In this case, I'll say straight razor or maybe barbering services. Once I give it a name, Shortcuts needs to know two things. Who's the employee that performs this service, and that's at the bottom of the screen, and which service am I talking about specifically? So I'll press the employee button first. And I'll say Joe is my barber, so I will press add. And is anybody else on staff a barber? Nope, it's just Joe. So I will press done. And then Shortcuts will remind me, okay, I have an employee. I need to choose at least one service for this person. So at the bottom of the screen, I can press service. I can go to my haircut category and let's assume that it's the men's haircut. He's the only one that performs it. And I can press add. And done. So now, if somebody were to go online for my salon and they were to choose a men's haircut, the only employee that will be available is Joe. Nobody else on my staff. So again, it's very easy to assign filters for certain services, certain employees under the capabilities button. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So those are the things that you want to configure for your online booking. And those are directly in your Shortcuts point of sale. The second place that you go to actually enable or disable certain things is on the Shortcuts console. So this is a web page. Most of you should be familiar with it. You go to console.shortcutsoftware.com. Your username will be your email, and hopefully you remember your password. Once you're there, there's three main buttons you configure: your company settings, your site settings, and your Bookme settings. So in the console, company settings corresponds with any information that the customer sees when they're on your online booking page. Do you have special rules you want to show up? Do you have certain terms and conditions that the customer has to agree to when they're making an appointment? Site settings corresponds with your contact information. So you want to make sure, do you have a business logo? Do you have a phone number? Do you have social media pages? Make sure that all of your contact details are correct. After you've configured your company and your site settings, then you're going to focus on your Bookme settings. So this is where you tell things like, how many days in advance are you allowed to make an appointment? Is there certain things that you want to allow the customers to do, such as, should a customer have permission to cancel their appointment if they made it online? Should they have permission to change what service they wanted to choose? And do you have a priority of services that should be performed? So you configure all of this in your Bookme settings. So let's actually take a look at those settings. So again, I'll get out of the presentation and I'll go online. So in this case, I'm actually going to go to Define Hair Design. They're one of the salons I work with. They're up in Canada. So I'm going to log into their console. So the three things: company settings, site settings, Bookme settings. I'm going to go to company settings first. So company settings, this is where I can upload a company logo. So you can see I have their logo here. And when I save these settings, that is the logo that appears on their online page. Also, you notice how the background has this pattern, this dark wallpaper? So you actually have what's called a theme, and you have about 24 different themes to choose from. So depending on your actual salon house colors, your logo, your branding, you should be able to find something that complements your salon, your shop. And then once you select it, when you press save on the top right corner, this web page will update in real time. So as you're going through, you just want to make sure your logo is set, your company information is set. If you're working with a web team and you know your Google Analytics domain name or your tracking number or your Google AdWord conversion code, you can go ahead and upload that here. So this will help you track customers. It will help you find out how your customers are actually hearing about your salon. Is it a search? Is it a certain web page? Are they going to your company page to make appointments? So you get a lot of details on potential customers as well as current customers if you have this information. And if you don't, this is something you can add in the future. So we'll scroll down. Now, by default, the online booking instructions are always in English. But let's say in the case of this salon, they're close to French Canadian speakers. So they want to offer a secondary language to put it in French. So if you go to the company settings, you can actually add multiple secondary languages. So if you're in a community that has Spanish speakers or Japanese speakers, whatever it is, chances are we have a language you can switch it to. So it'll default to English, but then the customer can choose a secondary. So let's scroll down. So again, this is the page where you update any special rules that the customer sees. Now, the very first rule, the first and second rule, is we tell the customers, please choose a category, please choose a service, and then potentially choose an employee. Now, you can change these instructions specifically for your business. So some salons have a mix of male and female staff. Some salons have an all male or an all female staff. So perhaps you want to change the instructions so that it doesn't mention if you prefer a female employee or if you prefer a male employee. Instead, you can let the customer choose a specific employee or let the computer choose any employee on their behalf, regardless of gender. So you can change those instructions, and that's under service selection text. If you have specific terms and conditions, when the customer is making an appointment online, this is where you can update it. So, of course, one of the big ones is in order to make an online appointment, you're confirming that you're of legal age, usually 18 in most locations. So, this way, if you end up coloring somebody's hair and their parents get mad at you, you can say, hey, when this customer signed up online, they said they were 18. So, if you don't like the color of their hair, take it up with your brat. So, update that information here. At the bottom, if you have a no-show policy for your salon, such as if you are a multiple no-show, the salon reserves the right to cancel your online appointment. Or if you're a multiple no-show, we reserve the right to charge you 50 or 100% during your next visit because, of course, the customer is taking up time for your staff and they're wasting it. So you reserve the right to charge them. So any special rules, go ahead and add them to your no-show policy. So as you're scrolling down and you're updating this information, it'll include things like choosing a day, choosing a time. Now, most of these instructions are pretty standard. The customer can press the calendar and choose a specific day and time. In this case, I want to come in next Wednesday for a haircut. And I want to come in during my lunchtime. So I'm going to say between 12 and 1 o'clock. See if there's an opening. And sure enough, Shortcuts did find me a 12 o'clock appointment. So I can press book now and I can sign up for online booking by creating an account for myself. Or if I have Facebook, I can log into Facebook, and then Shortcuts will just pull my information, my phone number, my email, and my name. So most of these instructions are fairly straightforward. As you make adjustments, don't forget to hit save. Once you finish that, then you focus on your site settings. Again, you can upload your logo. This information not only synchronizes online, it also affects any email campaigns that you're sending out. So if you have an appointment confirmation or appointment acknowledgement email that goes out, this is where it's pulling your social media links from. This is where it's pulling a description from if you're using the app. And at the bottom, this is where it's pulling your phone number and your address. So of course, you just want to double check this information. So Define, of course, has already been set up. So Company Settings, Site Settings, Bookme Settings. The third thing you set up. So in this page, this is where you set how many days in advance is a customer allowed to make an appointment. Now, if this is set to 0 days, that means a customer can make a same-day appointment online. As your salon starts to get busier, as restrictions get lifted, as customers are allowed to come to return back to your salons, and you get busy, then maybe you can bump this up to 1 day in advance is the soonest they can make an appointment. Or if you want to make sure your staff has time to prepare, then you can mark it up to hours in advance. So you can say the soonest a customer can make an appointment is 1 or 2 hours in advance. So there's not somebody that's 5 minutes away and they decide to make an appointment right now, and your staff is on lunch break and they assume nobody was coming in. So you can at least give them a little bit of lead time. And then the latest booking that is allowed. Most salons set it for 30 days or 60 days in advance. That's fine. Just make sure that your staff schedules are entered for at least the next 30 or 60 or 90 days. So Define Hair Design, they actually have their schedules in for the rest of the year. So they bumped out their availability for the next 400 days. So if your staff pretty much is settled on a schedule, go ahead and bump it out as far as you want. Is a customer allowed to cancel their appointment if they make it online? How many days in advance are they allowed to cancel it? If a customer wants to change what service they had, how many days in advance are they allowed to change it? Now, display availabilities with 50% efficiency or more. So what does this correspond to? This is how Shortcuts distributes the appointments across the staff, as well as allows your staff to have space to take in a walk-in customer. Now, if, again, you're being very strict on appointments only, then you can bump up the efficiency to 100%. You're telling Shortcuts, I am not going to give my staff any time for walk-ins. I want online booking to just book everybody back to back to back. But again, as restrictions start to get lifted and as you're allowed to start taking walk-ins, you may want to leave the efficiency at 50% so that there are gaps in between online booking where you can take care of a walk-in customer. And then display a maximum of how many availabilities. So if a customer knows what day and what time they come in, for example, I say, I want to come in next Wednesday between 12 and 1, then Shortcuts is going to show me the first few openings. It'll say, okay, here's a 12, here's a 12:15. If I decide I want to come in on Thursday or Friday, it will give me a couple more options. Now you notice, I only have 5 possible openings. 2 on Wednesday, 2 on Thursday, 1 on Friday. So that is because I told Shortcuts I only want to see my first 5 availabilities so that the customer has a few choices they can choose from. If we give the customer too many choices, 10 for example, then the customer is just going to see a big list of times and then sometimes confuse the customer. So really, you want to give them just a few choices just to simplify their selection. Now, if your salon or your spa is running some sort of special on a certain day, instead of showing them the usual 5 openings, you're letting them know I am really serious about this promotion I'm working on. So you see two availabilities, and once those two openings are taken, that special disappears for the day. So this is a topic for a future classroom session, how to set up specials. So we'll scroll down. Search a total of how many days after the start date. So this is really designed for the salons, the spas, the shops that are super busy on Saturdays, Sundays. So historically, those are the busiest business days. If a customer wants to make an appointment on a Saturday, and you know for certain my next two Saturdays are completely booked, then what Shortcuts is going to do is search at least 2 or 3 weeks worth of Saturdays to find an opening. So that's what this 21 days corresponds to. So after their start day, it'll try to look for an opening at least 21 days in advance in case your books are completely filled for a specific time and date. And service booking order. Now, this is very useful. Some services, you want to make sure that customers do not accidentally book in the wrong sequence. So, for example, customers that get a color or a chemical service, you want to make sure that is done first before they get a haircut. So you can actually tell Shortcuts, if a customer books a color service, I want that to be priority number 1. If they book a haircut service, I want that to be priority number 2 or number 3. So if a customer accidentally tries to book the haircut first and then the color, Shortcuts will put it in the right order and then put it on your appointment books. So that's what the service booking order does. Now, if there's a service that doesn't really interfere and historically it's the only thing that the customer books, for example, extensions, that can be set at a 0. This doesn't interfere with any other appointment. Same with consultation or manicures, pedicures, for example. That can be set at a 0. It isn't going to mess up your hair appointment. And again, space for you to enter any Google information. Now, as we scroll down, you do have some other Bookme settings. So this is if you're going to allow customers to email you a request, that's the first checkbox. Most salons usually don't have somebody on staff checking their email every few minutes to look for a request. So they usually disable that. Do you want to show prices of the services when customers make appointments? For most salons, they usually don't enable that. Some kids salons do, so that depends on your business. Do you want to show the employee levels? So do you want customers to know who's the senior stylist, the master stylist, the junior stylist? That will appear next to the stylist name as they're being booked. Now, if you're using appointment acknowledgments through the cloud, that's automatically disables this next checkbox, and it even spells it out. We will talk about this when we're doing Shortcuts marketing through the cloud. That's a future classroom session. Display service duration in the booking confirmation screen and email. Most salons do not do this because if a customer books a color or a chemical service, you don't want to misquote them their time. So once the customer's in the chair, maybe they change their mind on what they want, they have an add-on service, and then they get mad at you because their appointment took an extra 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And you say, well, once you were in the chair, you added something else. And the customer's like, no, you told me this appointment was going to take 2 hours. Now I'm late for something else. Well, instead of quoting them how long the appointment should be, we will only let them know what time their appointment starts when they get their email. Restrict Bookme bookings to 1 employee. Usually you want the customer to have the flexibility to choose different staff members for different services. So if you know they really like the way one person cuts hair, but they like the way another person does color, they can actually book 2 different people. Should a customer have the ability to cancel an appointment once they make it online? Now, the last one, I would advise leaving unchecked. Allow clients to rebook past bookings and reschedule future bookings for services that are not available. So what this does is a customer can actually see a list of the services they've had booked previously. and then choose that service again for the future. That's fine in theory, but if you update your service menu and you get rid of a number of services or you rename them, the customer will be able to book services you no longer do, again for the future. So that's why I advise leaving that checkbox off. But if you know your service menu is set in stone, it's fine to turn it on. Do you want to get CC'd on an email every time somebody makes an online booking? Probably not if you're dealing with hundreds and thousands of appointments every year. And then employee selection type. So again, if you have a mix of male and female employees, and you're going to let the customers, if they prefer one over the other, they should have this option enabled. But if you have a mostly male or female staff, and you're going to let the customer either choose a specific person, that's individual, or let the computer choose on their behalf, that's the any option. So for most of the salons that I work with, those are the only two checkboxes they have, any or individual. Don't forget to hit save, and then this will save your choices. So let's go back to the presentation. And now the next part. So we're actually going to talk about making an appointment. So you already saw that I chose a service, I chose a particular category and a service. I told the computer I want it with any available person on a Wednesday of next week. So if they're available, I can log in and then I can make that appointment. Now, something that a number of salons miss is that they forget that moms and dads can make appointments for their kids as well. So let's jump out for a second and let's actually see how to do that. So I'm going to say, okay, I want to book that 12 o'clock for next week. And I believe I've already signed up for Define Hair Design. Let me try to log in. Yes, I did. So any terms and conditions will pop up here. And notice it has my name here. So Shortcuts assumes, okay, I'm making a men's cut with anyone next Wednesday at 12 o'clock. If I decide I'm going to make an appointment for my spouse or my kids, I can press the plus button and I can create a secondary account. So parent, dependent, child, sibling, whoever this person is, every time I log into online booking, I can always choose a quick pull down menu and say, okay, it's not for myself, it's for my kid. And their information can be entered in here. So it's very easy to add everybody in the family. You just press the plus button and then you use your pull down menu and choose the specific people. So let's go down. And that actually sums up Shortcuts online booking. So we've now seen how to configure the actual Shortcuts point of sale, what settings you want to look at, business, employee, services. And then when you're online, what are the three buttons you look for? Company settings, site settings, Bookme settings. And we even looked at how to make appointments for yourself or for somebody else. So now we're going to open up the floor for questions. And I think somebody already asked the question. So I'm going to open it up on my side and let me take a look. So on the right side of your screen, if you're using the webinar, the GoToWebinar toolbar, go ahead and type in your questions. Taylor has a question. If we allow client cancellations, will the deposit be refunded or does that have to be configured elsewhere? Good question, Taylor. So we didn't mention upfront payments or cancellation charges on this one. This was just the basics on online booking. However, if you require a deposit for a service, or even if it's 100%, when making the appointment, that transfer gets done right away. So you're actually sitting on that money. If you were going to give them a refund, you would actually have to go to, if you're using Stripe, you would use Stripe to give them the refund, or in Shortcuts, you can charge them a cancellation fee, or you can put that money in their account so that they can use it the next time they visit. So that's a good question, but if the client cancels, it does not automatically refund. Okay. Are there any other questions? Let me bring up the chat window in case somebody put in a message. Is there a way for the client to reschedule their online appointment themselves? The customer would have the ability to change the service or to cancel the service. They do not necessarily have a way to reschedule. So no, unfortunately, Taylor, they would have to cancel and then schedule a new appointment. And if there was a deposit that was charged, they would be charged again for that second appointment. We are seeing if there's a way to modify it on our next build of online booking. So our developers are looking at it, but it's not currently available. Excellent question. And I can absolutely see why that question comes up. If you want to get on version 8.1, you should contact customer care because we have to schedule an upgrade with our help desk. And I'll have the customer care number in just a second. So again, most of the people that are watching this video, if you're not on version 8.1, you'll notice that my buttons look a little bit different. Appointment book looks a little bit different. So again, I'm on version 8.1 of Shortcuts. Okay. I don't think we have any other questions. If we do, I'll take them. But if you're interested in upgrading to version 8.1 of Shortcuts, let our customer care team know because we have to schedule this with the help desk. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's usually less than an hour. But of course, you want to schedule it either before the business opens or just after you close so it doesn't interfere in your day. So go ahead and give us a call. And if you have questions for me or the rest of the education team, and you're watching this video after the fact, you can also reach us at education@shortcuts.net. We also check the questions on our social media. So if you jump on Facebook, you can reach us on Shortcuts North America. If you're on Instagram, you can also reach us there, and we will get back to you. Okay, I'll double check to see if there are any other questions. And I don't think there are. Okay. Well, that covers everything we were going to look at today. So again, next Tuesday, we're also going to do another basics classroom session. So if you have a new manager or a new person that is on your staff and you want to make sure they're up to speed on Shortcuts, make sure you're signing up for our Tuesday classroom sessions. Once we finish the basics cycle, so all of the basics on appointment book, online services, cloud services, then we're going to start the advanced cycle. So we will have one on setting up extended commissions if you're using that, one on online booking on online marketing. So just make sure you're tuning in on Tuesdays or following along with the videos after. Okay, everybody. Thank you for attending, and we will be sending out a copy of this presentation a little later today. Have a great day, everybody.